Perfect. Let's bow in. Great. Onegaishimasu. Oh, okay, good. We're just at shoulder width, just find a bounce of the body. And settling the body into the ground. And swing front and back. And come into the center, swing into the sides. And to the center and take into rotation. And coming back to center and take it into a wave. And just let it go any direction and just follow the movement. Very good. Great. Take it into a nice deep breath, reaching up. Hinging down, long breath out. And climbing up through the spine. Good, and the last one here. Okay. Okay, I'll just release the spine a little bit, bringing the arms out to the side. Let them trace down the spine, center line. Release the head, neck, arms. And as you go to the ground, just taking a little bit of an impulse through the spine into the shoulders, head. And nice and slow, just tracing up the legs with the hands. Pause at the knees. And just flexing, extending through the spine. And then staying in this position, just lengthening through the spine. And just play with the head, just going left and right, looking left and right. Lengthening. Keep the knees soft. And then just up and down with the head. And then just play with this movement with the head going up. And coming up to standing and then curling down. So you're looking for another wave through the body. Coming up through extension, rolling under, extension to the spine and pushing up through the feet. Stop. That's great. Good. And then just pressing the hands gently into the back, gentle pressure forward and just looking up, a little bit of a back bend, but gently pulling the elbows back. Gentle pressure forward onto the hips. And release it, just looking towards the ground, release the spine. And just one more time, a little bit of pressure forwards, looking up, a little bit of a back bend. And release it. Good. And just take it to the shoulders, rolling them out. And then open up the elbows. Flat hands gently past the face. And then open it up. Nice big arm circles. And then reversing, keeping big circles. And taking it down to the elbows. Maybe just letting the hands gently brush across the face. And just mobilizing the shoulders out. Great. And just making a light fist, taking it to a rotation. Okay, good. Rolling the hips. Changing direction. Just bring the legs out a little bit wider. Sit into the hips, bend the knees a little bit. Just playing a little bit of a sway. Pressure from one foot to the other. Taking it down a little bit deeper and just play with a slightly more of a looser movement, taking it into a figure of eight. Rolling through the hip. If it feels uncomfortable, just go to a slight side to side one, but yeah, that's play if you can, just mobilizing it a little bit more. And just play with every so often shifting the direction. So, good. Let's come up a little bit higher. Press into the knees, length through the back. Keep the length, just opening up one side. Pulling back to center, find the length, and then take it to the other side. Very good. Good, and then just lengthening out one leg. And just holding it one side. Changing over. Taking a little bit deeper, bringing the toes up. Switching over. Great. And lengthening both legs back. Just the hands level with the chest. Start first with a nice feeling of length through the spine, looking towards the ground, but gently pulling the chin, chest away from the ground. Take a nice deep breath. And then just start to walk the hands out. And as you do so, just pull the hips back gently each time. Walk a little bit further forward, pull the hips back a little bit more. Walk out. Just find a position where there's a nice feeling of length through the shoulders, tailbone all the way through the spine. And just take a few breaths here. Great, and then just releasing the weight forward into the hands, bringing the feet together at the back, and just treading down through the heels. And lengthening through the legs. And walking the hands to the feet and folding forwards. And nice and slowly coming up to standing. Great. We just go in a little bit of a wider position for the hip. We just look at a little bit of foundation training work, but the first one, just think about chopping the hips back. So you're just going to kind of sit into the feet. Chest going to come forward a little bit. Feel the chest is just going to drop in between the feet. So just the feeling of chopping the hips back. Hips go back. Knees release after the hips. And then as you do, just play with really letting the toes come out of the ground and just feel the weight spread into the feet. That's perfect. And then you go just play with really opening out the body, so coming up into this position, really allowing the shoulders to open out, thumbs go spread out wide, fingertips spread out, and then again just chopping back. And then as you come up, nice big opening, lengthening up through the spine. And as you kind of create length in this top position, just try and maintain as much as possible as you go into this hinge. So the main thing trying to avoid in this case is kind of collapsing down. Just think about lengthening all the time. Really open up the space between the ribs and the hips. And also the space between the ribs opening up as you take nice deep breaths in. There we go, great. And then we'll just do a few with reaching out. So as you hit and hinge back, just allow the arms to just kind of float out from the body. So you don't want to kind of create all this excess tension in this case. So just think about chopping the hips back and then just let the arms release forward, and then you're going to create a little bit of tension in here, just at that top position, the outreach position. And then just pull back. Again, chopping out, roll the hands out, squeeze the fingertips together, and then pull back. Great. And again, just think about kind of making space through the body, especially in the rib cage and the space between the ribs, the hips, the width across the shoulders. And then the next, just reach out a little bit further. So if it generally feels like a little bit like kind of falling backwards, that kind of feeling in the body, but just extend a little bit further and then kind of pull back to center. So a little bit further, take a couple of seconds and then just pull yourself back. A little bit more outstretched. Great. That's good. Great. That's it. Perfect. And then the next one, just come to a more comfortable position. So with this one, the arms are a little bit closer to the body, hips are a little bit more comfortable back. And just think in this case, a little bit like kind of squeezing down the armpits. It's as if you've got like a big heavy, like 2 Bibles or something in the armpits. And you're just gently kind of squeezing down, not to close the armpits and press the shoulders together, but just to feel that you're really activating this. So, and then just think as you go up through the joint, the feeling of creating space across the elbows in this direction, and space between the wrists in this direction, and then really space between the hands and the fingers in this direction. So as well as kind of pressure in to the body this way, there's really a feeling of extension or expansion out to the outer edges of the body. And just take a couple of breaths there. And we'll just play a little bit with the hands in this position. Keep that feeling in the back here in the lats, and just play with this position. So the kind of classic position for us in terms of 𝘭𝘪𝘢𝘵, really with the feeling like the front of the hand, that part of the hand really kind of coming forward. So that feeling, and just play with it kind of coming from this position, and just feel again like lat activation, and then basically maintaining it as you go into this position. So you're not in a sense to kind of create rigidity in the body, but just a feeling of stability, space, opening up. That's it. And you just go now from this to this. Yeah. And then we'll just add a third one, really familiar for us in terms of Aikido, this kind of tiny hinko position. So you've got this position, and now play with also this position. So the palm basically up. So on a kind of really nice one for the lats in a sense, because it's a very natural position for the arm to really just drop into the back of the body. So just again, just exploring that position, and also that position. And again, that feeling of creating space between the elbows, between the shoulders, between the wrists. And that again, that sense of really opening up the hands. And just play with that, and again, just bringing really awareness to the back, underneath the shoulders. And again, all the time this feeling of kind of space between the rib cage, the hips, really kind of keeping the torso long. And then just play with those 3 positions. So like you've got that one as a kind of really nice clear one in terms of this activation, this one, and then just add a little bit of a kind of drop down now. So the focus now is not so much on the arms in this area, they're coming in, but think about the body basically dropping in. So you go now to more natural hip position, rather than in a sense of pulling back the hip. Think about dropping the hip into the feet. So this kind of feeling, or this kind of feeling, or that kind of feeling. Also as a kind of baseline for that feeling across the shoulders. The main 2 to play with in this case, for us especially like Aikido, because the positions we use a lot, is this position with the hand palm up, and this position with the blade edge of the hand kind of coming out. Again, it's just a feeling now the hips kind of drop into the ground. And again, think about in this case the same kind of order in terms of the foundations, of like the hips go back and then the knees release. Think about the same kind of feeling, the hips drop and then the knees will kind of release into it. In a sense, what I don't want to do in this case is kind of drop the knee and then the hips trying to find the ground. So think about a kind of cascading feeling down, and it's going to kind of soften in. That's it. And just before we go to each side, just play with one hand doing it. So nice position for the other hand is, there's 2 nice positions. One is on the center here, and the other is on the shoulder of the active arm. So if you think about, especially now these 2 positions, this one and this one, this is a really great position for the hand, just to feel what's kind of happening there. The main thing that I'm feeling in this case is the sense of this area basically being like the sense that it just flows back over the shoulder. As soon as I notice like this, and I kind of create a ledge in the shoulder, now I'm kind of working an area of the shoulder I don't really want to go to. So think about like a smooth kind of surface here, and that's the same also for this one. Yeah, that same feeling of this is very active, And this is quite relaxed, this is quite soft. And then the other one for the center is a nice one, just to bring awareness to that area and feel that it's actually mobilizing down. Mobilizing down into the ground. So, and just mixing the hands. So mixing that one, mixing both sides, and mixing where the hand is also. And the kind of listening hand in this case is also kind of really kind of active in the sense that it's really kind of gathering information in a sense. So that's it. Yeah, good. And that same feeling, just play with dropping to one side. So don't worry too much again about hand movement, but just think about one foot being forward. The key position that you're looking for is basically where one hip is forward, basically. So it's really where we go with hand later in terms of precision. But think about one hip being forward and the same hand kind of reaching out with it, and the same exercise. But don't be too worried in terms of precision of the feet. The main feeling in this case is that the hip is able to then really mobilize. And the third position now, shoulder center, is also the front hip, this one. And just again, just really feeling actually what's happening in the hip as I do it. The main thing I don't want to feel in this case is as I reach out, the hips stuck in place, or the hips stuck in place, and the torso is basically leaning over it. So try and feel that the hip is actually really mobilizing the hand. So this is also a nice one to do flexibly. In this case, something like this, or something like this. But again, also nice every so often just to go to a still position, check it, and then move somewhere else. And again, just mixing the sides, mixing the legs, hands. The easiest connection in a sense to work with at the start is the same hip and hand, basically working together. Yeah, the other check is also on the opposite side of the hip, the opposite hip to the movement. And just again, just feeling what's happening in that hip. So there. That's it. Yeah, very good. Very good. Yeah, good. Yeah. Yeah, perfect. And then just think about motion with this. So I use basically whenever I do this, I think about objects in the space when I'm doing it. So if you think about this motion as a kind of reaching out, and also this motion as in a sense, it's like an offering position naturally for the hand, but this one really has a sense of kind of opening out, and this one also has a sense of opening out. But they've got a different kind of feeling in the body. But yeah, just work in the space. Great things like light switches or bottles or anything that you're kind of naturally drawn to kind of reach out towards, but just play now with basically being in motion a little bit and basically directing the body either towards the object or also away from it, yeah, and reaching out. So you can move in, reach out, you can move back, reach out. The kind of natural sense in a sense for us in Aikido is that as you go forward, you're kind of using this position, and then as you go backwards, you're using this position. And these are kind of the positions we use a lot in terms of training. Open hand work. Oh. There we go. So. Yeah, good, great. Okay, and then we'll just look at 3 positions for the arm. They're a little bit more challenging in terms of the structure of the arm, because in a sense you're kind of doing the opposite to what I want to in terms of like grounding the body down, pulling back into the shoulder, pulling into the back, pulling the shoulders back in. So think about this in terms of high. You've basically got like a high position for the arm. If you think about kind of all these kind of 𝘱𝘰𝘠𝘦𝘢 positions where the blade of the hands coming up, think about a kind of mid-level in the sense where you're kind of coming into this position, and then think of this as a lower level, which is kind of like this kind of movement, which is a really nice one in terms of going into spiral work. But think in terms of like this coming up high, think in terms of this coming like mid-level, and then think of this coming low with it. But again, it's just a kind of test of that ability to mobilize the whole body together, but also stay in the structure of stay in the feeling of the back being full. But very easy to kind of start to lose now. And again, you can use this in a sense of kind of reaching motions, also kind of useful, or kind of gathering motions with the feeling of the body. In terms of Taijutsu, you're same kind of feeling, directing energy out with a solid structure behind it. So, good. Very nice, good. Yeah, good. Good. And then the last one we'll play is just a kind of making this kind of flexible. So in a sense, what we're doing here is kind of reaching out, pausing, changing, reaching out, pausing, changing. Can become a bit static, robotic. So think about now using both hands, kind of tying them together with the feet. The first week, just play with being on the ground with the feet. So not stepping, and just think about this movement now becoming a little bit more flexible, or a lot more flexible. And the movement starting to kind of breathe in a sense. Now, what you're looking to do is basically find the feeling here. Really feel that everything starts to move together. And then once you feel that, just start to play with expanding it and contracting it. So you're looking to basically pull into the body and expand out from the body. And again, the kind of extent to which I can kind of connect the body together without kind of splitting or squeezing the body in. And it's really the kind of space you're looking for. And again, just play with both sides a little bit. Yeah, so it's in a sense any exercise we do are kind of, there's loads of places where I can get kind of lost and go off the path of it, especially with their empty hand work, open hand work. So think about, in this case, think about kind of practical thing in the sense like pressure coming into the body through the hands, And then also like, I want to exert pressure out. So pushes are also really great for this. So play with a push, but just play with this feeling. It's like something's really coming into the body and I'm kind of absorbing it in. The feeling's really you're absorbing into the ground. So everything basically needs to sink. I need to basically create a path down. And then the same as you push out, I need to basically create a path down from the ground and then out through the hands. So push is a really great one for this. Push exercises are really perfect exercises for this. And they also, in terms of when you're doing these kind of empty hand work, give a really kind of clear feeling for the body to kind of work with. But as soon as they become kind of just pushing the arms out, something gets a little bit lost with them. So that's it. Yeah, good. And then with that feeling, just start to play with the four. It's a spiral work we do all the time, especially with the 𝘗 when we do these kind of exercises. Think about the elbow now and the forearm and the wrist really being able to mobilize as you do it. So again, think about pressure coming in, pressure coming out, but really now trying to get this sense of a spiral through. Now I don't want to go to the point where I go into a kind of a push with the joint, with the hand. You want to work with basically within this range, so it's like the thumbs really kind of pointing back to the body. And as soon as it goes out, I'm starting to go more into a kind of push position, which isn't bad. It's just a slightly different exercise. That's it. Breaking a bump. That's it. Great. And then the last stage from this, before we go into sword with this, think about just shifting the weight now. So as you shift the weight, you can obviously play with stepping, but again, the real kind of key with this, not to kind of just step through, but really think about shifting weight as you go. So think about really, you don't really need to move forward with this exercise to kind of play with it. You can obviously start to kind of open up into stepping work and rotation work. But again, it's the kind of extent that I can keep this feeling connected to the body, to the hands, to the hips, and then basically connected to a feeling really down. And then be able to shift across with it in space. And again, don't worry too much about hand precision in the footwork, just focusing really on placing the foot, shifting the weight. Placing the foot, shifting the weight into it. So. And again, if you feel really kind of connected with this, you feel pretty good. Just think about adding a little bit more extension out and a little bit more kind of drawing into the body. So then that expansion, contraction becomes really challenging, again, for the shoulders to stay within the back, within the body. And the other one you can do if you feel really connected is start to go into lower positions, lowering the hips down and also raising the arms up on the ground. There we go, good. Okay, grab a bokken. We're gonna look at similar kind of idea. Okay, so we looked a lot at the first 𝗧𝗪𝗏 yesterday, looking at this kind of vertical. So we'll skip it and we'll shouldn't really skip it, but we'll focus just on the 𝘥𝘠𝘦𝘢. So just working on the spot in this case, and just play with the kind of soft focus. And the focus really now for the body work is just letting everything go in together, and then it's really the sense that you stabilize in the extension. So you're looking for two things: really mobilizing the body together, really stabilizing through the curve. Great. So. Okay. We'll just look at a couple of points. In a sense, like minor joints, in a sense, but very important, especially for sword work. Think about the wrist, basically mobility through the wrist. Now, you can, in a sense, really miss this training. In a sense, if I kind of use a grip like the grip's in the correct position, but in a sense, this is braced as I go into it. So whenever I move the sword, actually, this doesn't shift. Nothing changes here. So you can spend a lot of time in this area, and basically nothing happens in this whole area. So I never actually train it. And then, especially when it comes to movements like 𝘥𝘠𝘦𝘢, if this part of the wrist isn't mobilizing, it really becomes very difficult to mobilize the weapon in terms of a kind of fluid, circular spiral kind of pattern. So just play with this, the sort of, as you come up, work with a vertical movement this way, kind of coming straight into a 𝘱𝘰𝘠𝑚𝑖𝑛-𝑢𝑐ＨI, and play also with going into the 𝘥𝘠𝘠𝑚𝑒𝑛. But especially the 𝘱𝘱𝑚𝑖𝑛-𝑢𝑐HI is a very good position to play with this mobility, which is like this kind of mobilizing of the wrist through the joint. So if you think about it, it makes perfect sense in the sense that if I'm using the back of the grip to do it, what I want to do is actually start to create this motion in the back of the grip, so that actually what's kind of pressing the sword up is the back of the hand. And then the wrist, the thumb, the four fingers are going to kind of start to mobilize it up, and also mobilize on the way down. So again, play with a light enough grip so that I can really start to work with the feeling of that mobility this way. And the 𝘥𝘠𝘦𝘢 is slightly different kind of feeling in the body, but it's based on that same wrist mobility. It's just starting to open out in terms of arm work. But just play with kind of a straight line 𝘱𝘠𝘠𝑚𝑖𝑛-𝑢𝑐HI, going into a diagonal 𝘥𝘠𝘠𝑚𝑖𝑛-𝑢𝑐HI. And again, just experiment with the ability of the wrist to really mobilize. The more the wrist can mobilize, the more I'm going to be able to mobilize the weapon as well, the tip of the sword. Yeah, and then the other point, really focus on the footwork as you do it. So as you do this exercise especially, think about the back foot being, the front foot being full, just going to kind of relax and release. And the back foot's going to really mobilize in this position. So it's going to really, I'm going to release the whole foot. The toes are going to peel out of the ground as I do it. And that's the kind of same as you're kind of working in and out of the feet. So just the best thing to think about is just think about using the whole foot. Same thing with the wrist. What I don't do is like brace the foot, the ankle, and then kind of just move it in space. Again, it's going to, especially in that case, it's going to create all this tension here in the hip, and then expecting the hip to mobilize with a very tight ankle and knee connection is really going to be difficult. So think about, in this case, kind of releasing the joint. And again, you're mixing two things, the stability in the front leg with the mobility of the back coming in, and then switching, and then rolling through, switching, but especially this kind of mobilizing in of the front of the back foot to the front. This kind of feeling, and just play with it. Sometimes do it without the sword, sometimes do it with. And that same kind of motion works for the 𝘱𝘰𝘠𝘧𝗏 as the 𝘥𝘢𝘦𝘦, just a slightly different hip connection or hip position. So. Yeah. Good. Good. Great. So we'll go into stepping. So it's really putting all this together now. Really think in this case of the rotation that goes to the hip. So the main feeling with this again is like dropping into this front leg this way and letting all the weight basically settle in as you mobilize the back foot and as you mobilize the hands up to the top and then into the curve. So again, just play with it a little bit. The best thing to play with in this case is the sense of kind of hanging in this position, dropping into the ground here, and then really feeling that the center line's actually shifted over to this foot, and then I can shift it into the step this way. So again, just play with it, but especially this kind of motion is a really great one to play with, because it's a very good position to tell whether I'm working the hip over the foot or the hip going out of the line. That's just play with one exercise here, so it's a really nice one to work with. Just let the sword basically find the center line, so it's like a plumb line through the body. Now, the main thing to notice in this exercise is the difference between me being in a position like this, square on with it here, and that as I take a step, basically the center line, this part, doesn't pass the foot. It basically goes to the side. So something like this happening. And Jerry, it's like if you're walking through the day, especially unconsciously, then I'm kind of doing something like this, where I'm kind of falling and the foot's just kind of catching me. When you're doing this kind of movement in terms of the sword, think about this kind of center line actually shifting over to the foot. Yeah, so that the center of the body, the center line, this way is actually allowed to basically shift towards the foot. And then from here, you can basically just pass through. Yeah, so just play with it a little bit, but it's the difference between the hip and the center basically just pushing forward and basically falling forward. And the difference between it actually is going to kind of make a shift. And I'm actually then going to like fall really into the foot. And then in terms of balance, connection to the ground, it's much more easier to maintain it. And from this position, I can also keep the hip flexible. So the back hip's able to then really mobilize without its job being to catch the body basically, which is what a lot of us do when we kind of walk, especially if we do it in a rush or these kind of things. But in this case, really let's play with the sense of the center line. Just be able to shift. Just shifts out to the foot. And it goes out to the. So. Great. And last one, we'll just look at an exercise. It just, in a way, challenges that ability. So you kind of, in a sense, develop this idea with the 𝘥𝘠𝘦. And then if you go to like, especially number 7, when you're going into a left side ski, this sense of really dropping the center line into the foot and then really rolling into a spiral here. So just the last couple of minutes, just play with, again, finding a right side cut. And then in this case, a left side ski. But again, really that feeling that you draw the center line into the hip and then find the ground again. So just that kind of exploration of a very balanced body going through the ground. And again, if I just pull the hip forward, it's going to kind of create a motion in the body which is falling and then catching. But I really just want to have the sense that you're already sunk into the ground. There we go. Okay, last 30 seconds. So we'll just loosen out a little bit. So just let the shoulders drain down, shift into a shoulder width. Now just play with one thing. You've got an up and down motion kind of happening, like a pulse. And just also play with that gently shifting to one side. So just shifting the center line. Again, you're just shifting the center line. Finds this foot. Goes this foot. And just play with it, just a kind of gentle kind of bounce. Think about releasing the shoulders as well. You can let the sword go to one side. Well, just play with just the feeling of being able to shift the center, keep the body free. And really also notice when you do kind of really pass into the center line and it falls really into both feet. And you're very much in kind of an even position. And then looking at being asymmetrical a little bit. And trying to keep that same feeling. And then the last one, just play with a sway. So it's just a swaying of the hands. Just let the shoulder kind of open out a little bit. And it's just then this feeling. Really kind of releasing towards the feet. Releasing the shoulders. And each time just make it a bit smaller. Just really go towards the center line. Let the weight just drop between the feet. Make it a bit tighter, a bit smaller. And then just settle into the feet there. There we go. Very good. Okay, we will. Great. どうもありがとうございました。
どうもありがとうございました。
Okie dokie. Great.